Hello, everybody. I am John O'Loughlin. Welcome to McDuff Lives. And it's a Friday here at McDuff Lives, and that means we have our Friday live chat. And once again, my wife, Marcia, is joining us. Hello, Marcia.
Hello. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, and I'm thinking we should make this permanent. I've been enjoying it so much. Would you consider considering it a permanent thing in 2025?
Did I join you each Friday?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you for asking. Yes, I'd love to.
All right. Well, that's great. That's my second New Year's resolution I've made so far. The one other one yesterday was with Adam Finnegan on the show,
Mm,
where I said I am going to encounter the physicians that I know, even obliquely, even just through treatment or whatever, and
hmm
try to get them interested in studying the sleeper agent and immune tolerance and what is really lying behind all of these chronic diseases, Lyme and this turbo cancer, which is really one of the biggest issues I've been working on this year.
Yes, it has been.
So that's two things to remember to get underway. But next week, I think we're still going to be in at least until what, Wednesday? No, Tuesday is the last day of 2024.
Yes.
So I've got to expedite my plans. I've got things I got to get done.
Yes, but Wednesday is the first day of 2025. You still have 364 days to accomplish things. It's not like you have to accomplish everything on the first day.
Okay, I can do this.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can do this. Well, we do have a lot of plans, and it looks like a fun and interesting, healthy, and hope and I believe healthy year for Marcia and John down here on Mystery Island, and really benefited from so much that we've learned from colleagues on the internet that have been part of our lives now, like Nick Petoskey and
hmm
Karma Doc and all of our great guests that share their experience and understanding with us. I love working with David Kremmer Underdown, and it was great to have George Webb back on the show. Hopefully, he and I can do some more work in 2025.
I know
I
everybody out there would really enjoy that.
I think George has rekindled his interest in the McDuff story and
hmm
is talking about it on his Substack recently. So George Webb, of course, is a unique mind and a person who's been very good to me in telling my dad's story.
Yes, yes.
So all the best to George Webb and all of the people that work with him and his charrettes. The first three charrettes were down here with George at the first one, and then no, the
Mm,
first one was in Annapolis,
yes.
and that's the one that Marcia organized.
I didn't organize that.
Well, you and I did together.
Did we?
Yeah, we got the hotels, and we set up the boat trip, and
Wow.
found the restaurant for the big dinner, and
Oh, yeah, you did that.
yeah, well, you and I together, we did it, and then we created the email list and all of the technical stuff that had to be done, and then we had the third one, which was for my dad's 100th anniversary
Mhm.
of his birth,
Mhm.
or that was the second one, and then the third one was June the 6th of 2021
Mhm.
when I launched the book, and we celebrated my dad's the 50th anniversary of his untimely passing. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, George has been with me all the way, and I've supported him as much as anybody can. His work is really priceless.
Yeah, George is a very, very smart man, and he has a lot of information and wisdom to share.
And so do so many of our other guests. Our boy Morich has just been a delightful addition to our shows. Once a month, he's here on McDuff
Mhm.
Lives with me, and his great show called Geopolitics and Empire is. I mean, he works hard. He works like many hours put together his really interesting shows, and he produces it all himself. And he must be like, when I started out, I was doing 15 shows a week, remember?
Right.
And I think he probably does 20, but he gets them all done. And he does really good content. He's just a real expert in geopolitics, and I think Empire is a great way to summarize my view of what the world looks like right now. It's starting to look more and more like the Roman Empire writ large.
Yes, it does.
An empire is not a good thing. You don't, I don't care what you read in school about how the Romans with their great eagles and their triumphs and SPQR and, I want to be a gladiator or something. I mean, no, you don't want to be a Roman soldier in, a very, very awful, awful life. So, but that's where we're heading. If we don't find some way to change course, the power is getting concentrated into fewer and fewer hands. And we've been studying it with Harley Schlanger all year. Every other week, Harley joins us at 11 a.m. on Tuesdays, Eastern time, and of course his extremely immense knowledge of the esoteric side of history, as well as the just regular old textbook history. But
yeah, I mean, Harley, not just history but current events. I mean, he has a handle on current events around the globe in a way that I wish I had that kind of recall. I'll remember something, but I don't remember names, and Harley has all this information just right there in his head.
Yeah, and the whole team at LaRouche organization is they're all very much like Harley in the breadth of their knowledge of their subjects. The only thing that I don't want to be Mr. Negative, but if I could only get them to take a hard look at the medical information that we have produced here at McDuff Lives and that other people are producing, but especially Adam Finnegan's book, and to take seriously the idea that perhaps the World Health Organization is not your best friend. Perhaps the World Economic Forum is a real threat to our way of life. That compliance with the medical mandate system is troubling to me, and I don't mind saying so. It's been troubling me for years,
yeah.
But take what you can use and leave the rest behind. Their content is wonderful. It's incredibly well written, well documented what they do. No, they don't have footnotes in their executive intelligence review articles, because it was like a monthly magazine, not something. There are footnotes in many of the articles, but one could wish for more. That's
interesting.
Yeah, because you read something really extraordinary about, like, a character like the Black Prince, Junio Valerio Borghese.
Oh, Borghese.
And wow, I want to study more about this. And I did. It's great. It's just jump into a rabbit hole like that. But you learn about the submarine warfare carried on by the Italians under his command in World War II, and the use of submarines for nefarious purposes after the war is probably a story that needs to be fleshed out more. But this was a very, very elite fascist organization that did not mind murdering people at all for the sake of defeating communism in Italy. And that the depth that we can get into by just thumbing through executive intelligence review old articles is just tremendous. So I enjoy all that. I love all of the interviews that I've been interviewed this year a lot, And I've
You
been
know, that's true.
I've been
Yes.
delighted to be interviewed by really competent people.
Yeah.
And Hervoye Morris did a great job interviewing me. Anton Chaikin, I was so honored that, the great Anton Chaikin interviewed me for his Substack and for his and he was very, very gracious uh, and I think my dad's story is getting into that milieu of people, the people that have been studying things like like Harley. Uh, Oops. So anyway, um, my dad's story, it's taken years, but it's getting into important people's minds now, and I think Anton or Tony Chaikin will always be helpful in helping me spread the word about the reality of my dad's
And it's
story.
such an important story. It is gratifying to see that when people take the time to understand the story or learn the story or just become aware of the story, that they recognize how important it is.
I think so. I really do. It's almost like Shakespeare. There's so many parts of my dad's life that I can say, this is like Hamlet, or this is like Othello, or of course, this is like Macbeth, which is the source of Lead on McDuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and who's checking in? Did our first comment this morning on the last live chat of the year is from Can Direct Allison V, our friends at Allison V, and that is Scott. And Scott, happy New Year to you. Happy holidays. Sad that we have come to this state regarding human health. It's sad. It's criminal.
You're right.
It's genocidal. It's just unbelievable. It is so bad that people just can't believe it. And it's one of those things that we've been psychologically conditioned to not even want to consider, that something as bad as the sleeper agent or, other diabolical means of just making us sterile,
Unhealthy.
making us stupid,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these things, people that grow up in the United States have this basic trust in humanity that is our weakest point, because people that grew up in Europe or Asia or anywhere else in the world that didn't have our sense of individual rights and freedom are aware that the state is always powerful and can always squash you like a bug if you don't if they think you're not acting right. you know that's the default of history is tyranny. The default of history is slaves and oligarchs and empires and just complete disregard of human rights, racism, and just the whole idea of anything that's not like us is an enemy and better off dead. That's history. That's the way
Right.
people thought, and we in this
And still
country are not aware, and we have lost our sense of wariness. We don't be aware of the fact that there are a lot of human beings out there that just want to control the rest of us, and will do so by any means necessary.
Yeah, people can't accept the fact that the government might be something different than what we are told it is. We are raised with this concept of government for the people, by the people, of the people, with the people.
Yeah.
You know, we can't, it's so hard to grasp this concept that it really isn't that at all, that it's government for a select few and that all the policy is based on what benefits the select few. People don't want to hear that. It's just too disruptive to their well-being and to their sense of security.
Yeah, security, that's the key, isn't it? If you feel, warm and fuzzy and you can heat your house and feed your kids and you know, pay your taxes and have 2 weeks off and, you know, go spend a bunch of money at Ocean City and call it a life. If that you can do that, um, it it's almost hard to imagine that you would want to rebel against what really is a basic but a comfortable life. And it seems like if you really protested against these elites, that you'd lose what you have.
Ah, yeah. I think that's a big part of it. Because what they have is this belief that they have about who we are and what our society is all about is the foundation of that comfortable life. And if I am going to accept that the reality is very, very different, then that shakes my whole foundation, the foundation of my comfortable life, and that comfortable life might be threatened.
I think about all of the dollar printing that's gone on in the past 4 years or the past 8 years or however you want to start. But I think the Biden administration is where I would put most of it, although it started, you know, when the pandemic, quote unquote, was called. And throwing, you know, trillions of dollars into private companies to supposedly do something for public health, you know, something good for the country generally. It's hard to believe that they would do that with criminal intent. But if you look at the facts, it looks like it was all a big criminal conspiracy to rip off the taxpayers by, you know, just diluting once again the value of the dollar. Because that $1 trillion, those $2-3 trillion, and who knows how much more, that didn't represent any real value in our government, in our economy. That was just printed on. That was just printed and handed over. And we are the people that bear the burden of it. We, you know, we don't have an inflation adjustment that actually keeps up with our costs, or nor do we have the benefit of making all that money that people made. You know, like doctors, you know, that would get paid, you know, $10,000-$15,000 if they would do an intubation, or, you know, you see these stories of how hospitals and doctors and all were getting these big bonuses just because they gave a certain diagnosis that they might not have given otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And this, we see it and it wears on us.
Right. Right.
And I guess that's all I'm trying to say, is that hopefully the people recognize that this is a big ripoff, that this whole business of printing money and handing it to a small group of elite corporate, you know, operators.
Well, and creating policy that benefits a small group of elite operators, creating military industrial activity that benefits a select few, and setting policy based on what military industrial activity will result from that policy. It's all about benefiting these corporations. And it's, you know, and it's not just military, it's other. It's the, you know, it's, we've talked about
No,
this.
it's like pharma. Yeah.
Pharma, exactly. And also, you know, the corporate agriculture.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know about manufacturing. I have a tough time understanding why manufacturing is such a troubled industry. I mean, I recognize that you go offshore because it's cheaper, but it just doesn't make any sense to me. I sometimes think I've missed a piece of that story. But anyway, that's a whole different discussion.
No, I'm interested though. Tell me what it is that troubles you about well, I guess what are you saying is the problem that you don't understand?
The wages are much less. Manufacturers pay much lower wages, let's say in some Asian country.
Yeah.
And so they manufacture there and then bring their products over here. I can't understand how the cost of shipping the products is so low that it doesn't offset the wage savings. In other words, I'm paying more to manufacture it here, but I don't have to ship it. But I manufacture it there, but I still have to ship it. But clearly that shipping cost is still less than the difference between what I'm paying to manufacture it here. That's the piece that to me, I find hard to believe. That the shipping cost is so much, it doesn't even offset that wage difference.
And yet that's what has happened.
It's exactly what's happened.
Now, do you think that there's another reason that it's happened then, other than saving money on wages?
I don't know. I do wonder, is there another reason? Is there another piece of that? Absolutely.
Yeah. I think if I were to speculate, it probably had to do with the desire to build up China, to give China an internal economic engine. And in order to do that, they had to build factories, and they had to dig coal, and they had to create, job markets and things like that, which they have done extremely well. And now, Trump may just be announcing a policy that has already been set for, by the great financial wizards of the time, that now it's time for the pendulum to swing back. And so Trump's saying, "Oh, we're going to bring our jobs back to America."
Right. Well, and that's where the tariffs come into play, because
Right.
by imposing the tariffs, then you level the playing field. You cover that difference in what it's costing you. You make it more expensive to manufacture overseas. Absolutely.
But theoretically, that hurts everybody else in the world, because they're no longer making money working at the factory that's owned by the Americans.
Right.
But how do you explain this? All of the foreign car companies that are here in America using American labor on some theme that American labor is cheaper than Japanese labor, or, something very cheap about operating in America,
Right. Well, initially at one point there was a limit to how much these foreign companies could import when it came to automobiles. You could only import a certain number of Toyotas, or you could only import a certain number of Hondas. And that's why the trucks were so popular at some point. And I'm going back a number of decades, but there was a time when there was no limit on how many of those. Remember those little bitty Toyota trucks that used to run around? Yeah. There was no limit on how many of those you could import. So they were importing a ton of those, but the cars, there was a limit. And that's why they started making them here. Initially, anyway, they started making them here because then they could sell more.
Well, I would like to see America rebuild its economic engine, from the inside out. I think, the amount of devastation that you see in our cities, and, it's famous, and it's Western Europe also in decline. But this whole business of why in the hell should America go into decline? We were the greatest economic engine, the greatest military, the most patriotic people in the world in 1945. And now, 80 years later, almost 90 years later, no, it's 80 years later. It's like, Americans are like, you know, second class, third class citizens in the world with the worst health care in the whole developed world.
Right.
The worst health outcomes in the whole developed world.
Right.
And we put up with it, you know? Uh,
Yeah, our healthcare costs are the highest in the world. Our outcomes are among the lowest in the industrialized world. And we are spending so much on healthcare. It's just, it's embarrassing.
it is, yeah.
It's really, it's horrific. And, I read where not only are we, you and I, and everybody else individually spending a lot on healthcare directly, but also indirectly, because every product that we buy, there's a certain amount of healthcare cost that is added to that product so that these companies that are selling those products can provide healthcare to their employees. So we're paying for healthcare not only for ourselves and our families, but for all the employees of all of the companies whose products we use.
Hmm.
It's crazy.
One of the one of the things that kind of struck me this year, just going through the things that I've learned this year, is that income tax is slavery. Let me explain what I mean. If I have, if I say, let me make it simple, I'm a laborer, okay? And I have a work week of, say, 60 hours, or let's just make it simple, make it 40. I've got 40 hours
Mm-hmm.
and I'm in good shape and I can work. So I go out there and I spend that energy that I have built up. I use, the metabolism that I own, that I have created for myself to be a good worker, and I expend that energy for 40 hours. Okay? And then they give me a check for, $800. Okay. Was that an even exchange? Well, yeah. I mean, if the average $20 an hour for a good laborer, yeah, that's an even exchange. Okay, so who made a profit? Did I make a profit? No. I gave something of equal value to the person that gave me something of equal value. Where's the income? I had outflow as well as income, and it balanced out as I just explained it. So where in the hell is the right to claim that some of my work doesn't belong to me and can just be snatched away from me because of a regulation that the employer has to snatch it? I think it's slavery.
Okay. I don't quite see that, but okay.
Well, it's just I think it is. I mean, like, for instance, suppose that everybody that works in the world went out and just decided, I'm going to make a corporation. I'm going to be a corporation, and I'm going to create a corporation, and then I'm going to negotiate a price for my laborers to work for the boss. And I negotiate the price, it's $20 an hour, and then I'm the laborer. Well, then the corporation has spent the money to pay the laborer and got balanced it off with the income from the employer. So the laborer, where's the profit? All right, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. The whole income tax thing, what it boils down to for me is that if there were no income tax, how would the government operate? How would we pay for the cost of operating a government?
And you know the answer, right?
Go ahead.
Tariffs
On who?
on foreign goods coming into the country, tariffs on stuff. That was before there was an income tax. That was how the government paid for itself.
And did it work?
Yeah,
Then why did they add the income tax?
so that they could get more money.
Right.
So that
And
they
we're
could,
still operating at a deficit.
yeah,
Right.
because it is all a big conspiracy to rip us all off of our daily labor, and to their profit over and over and over again. That's why income tax was created, was so that they could bring in more money to run their government programs to their own benefit. Yeah, like the World War One. You know, how could they have afforded World War One if they didn't have an income tax?
Right.
But they wanted to have a war, so they had to get some money. So they just passed an income tax, knowing that they were going to spend it in a couple of years when the scheduled next war broke out.
And so is Trump going to use these tariffs that he's going to start charging to cover the cost of operating the government?
Why shouldn't he? It's just like the economist Michael Hudson said, and I told you this once, but I think this is a pretty good idea. If you taxed every transaction that happens on the internet by 1 penny, then you could fund the government.
Mm-hmm.
So why not just do that?
Mm-hmm.
And forget about the whole IRS. We don't need it. We don't need to file these reports. We don't have to keep track of anything. Just there it is. So yeah, I mean,
I'm good with that.
the income tax is also, it's a good way to keep us from building our wealth. It keeps us down.
Right.
Yeah. Imagine that. Notice how these foreign car companies set up shop in the lowest wage paying states. Yeah. And that's another part of it is, they're gradually wearing us down to the lowest wage paying, while inflating the dollar so that even $15 an hour, which sounded great when I was, now it's like just you can't even get by.
Right. And not only the lowest wage paying states, but also states where unions aren't as powerful.
Yeah, imagine that. So haven't we all been debt slaves since 1913, since they created the Federal Reserve and the IRS? And yeah, that was exactly what they did. They made us all debt slaves. Our commitment, to our country, to full faith and credit. We want our debts to be paid. If the government, United States government owes $30 trillion, God damn it, we're going to pay it because we're Americans. We're not going to declare a bankruptcy just to walk away from $30 trillion in debt, although any sensible government would.
Okay.
Why not? We should be declaring this whole thing bankrupt, and write off all of those trillions of dollars of debt, which is only just as funny as the paper it's written on. It's worthless.
Okay. I have trouble with this whole conversation because economics is such a complex subject that, I'm not sure there are ever any simple answers.
Let's move on then. Yeah. And now the federal government is the largest employer in the U.S. Yeah, that reminds me of what we spoke about a month ago, the Cloward-Pliven plan of destroying a country by increasing its entitlements to the point where it can never meet its entitlements.
Yeah. And that employment also includes the military too.
And the federal debt is cuckoo. I think that's a pretty wise and accurate way to put it.
Yes, well said.
But if we're going to go and conquer Mars, and the future is as great as President Trump says it is, who cares about the debt? The debt is just going to be sitting there on the computer saying, oh, how much do we owe? 29 trillion. Oh, it's going over 30 trillion. It's interesting, but as long as everybody believes in the project moving forward, and doing things like mining asteroids and new technological advances that are going to create more economic free jobs and stuff, then it sounds good. That's the pitch that we're getting from Trump and Elon Musk is, the future is going to be great.
Well, we have to cut down. I am interested to see what Elon Musk and his partner, I forget the guy's name, who's also his co-doge, is what they're going to do with that and how that's going to impact everything, how that's going to impact the economy, especially economies in communities where there is a huge dependence on federal government as an employer. Not only places like Washington, D.C., but places that have huge military bases. And like the Virginia Beach area, I think the Virginia Beach area is number one in the country for federal payroll, with the largest percentage of payroll coming from the federal government because of that huge naval base that's there and the other military facilities. And so what kinds of cuts are the Doges going to make, and how is that going to impact communities and economies? And then, of course, and see, this is where I talk about what I mean when I talk about the economy being so complex, because the minute you say, okay, I'm going to cut this payroll of this organization by, cut it in half. We're gonna lay off half the people, and we're gonna cut some programs, and we're gonna operate more efficiently. Well, then all of those people who have been laid off are going to change their spending patterns because they've lost their income. And so then there's this indirect effect, because all of these companies that used to sell to those people are going to start feeling the impact of fewer customers, because their customer base now doesn't have an income, so there are no longer customers. And so these companies start having an impact and feeling this impact of these cuts, and then they start cutting their spending. And this is what I'm talking about when I say this is so complex, because then they start cutting their spending, and then you have these induced impacts, economic impacts of the spending that's not happening, and therefore what that's doing to businesses, to companies, to sellers of goods and services, and so on and so on. You have this snowball effect. So the answers can never be simple, because you have direct, you have indirect, and you have induced economic impacts of all of those actions.
Don't touch the house of cards.
Mm.
Don't pull that card out there.
Right.
We need that card. You may not know how badly we need that card, but the whole thing could fall if somebody pulls the wrong card out.
Right. It could be. And is that a bad thing? I don't know. Maybe the house of cards does need to fall, and then we rebuild it with a much more secure foundation. I'm not saying don't make changes. I'm saying it's going to be interesting to see, and what changes will the American public tolerate, and what changes will be made that benefit us and not the corporations. And that's where I worry. Everything is being done to benefit the corporations.
Well, Raytheon. I have an old friend, one of Joe Mannion's son works for Raytheon.
Mm-hmm.
What do? They build sophisticated weapons. They build Patriot missiles, and they build all of the wiki-wacky that and all of this has been going on, since World War II. It is one of the military-industrial complex that was there even when Eisenhower made his speech. And so this huge thing, if we were able to stop the wars that employ the munitions to kill people, then we would be killing the economy that's built around Raytheon.
Right.
And in that case, we have a real moral, ethical decision to make there, and this is where we really are stuck, because it's hard to make a decision that is going to possibly be that card pulled out of the house of cards that you
Indeed.
really didn't want to see it fall.
Well, the same thing could be said of healthcare. I mean, you and I talk about changing healthcare and how much spending is going on in healthcare. Imagine if everybody adopted the healthy way of eating that you and I have adopted. Number one, a ton of food companies that are manufacturing really beautifully packaged crap would go out of business because people would stop eating ultra processed food. And all of the people who are raising livestock would go out of business because they're no longer eating animal products that are causing cancer and heart disease. And then all of these healthcare providers and all of these clinics and hospitals and private practices would suddenly stop seeing patients and suddenly stop having patients because everybody's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
What would that do to the economy? These kinds of changes are going to all have huge economic impacts. The long term is going to benefit humanity, but the short term is going to be very painful.
If if we live long enough, one day I hope we'll have a self-sufficient vegetable garden in our little quarter acre.
I would love that.
I mean, maybe we have an eighth of an acre that we could use, but the we get a lot of we get sunlight, and we're in a good location. I think, I think we could possibly do it, and if everybody did that, actually was able to live off of their own land, that's the idea of freedom in America. That's what the people went out on the frontier to do. They said, I'm getting away from, I'm not going to pay any more rent. I'm getting away from this horrible, urban environment. I'm going to go out and I'm going to make, get me 40 acres and cut down the trees and make pasture land, and I'm going to grow my own food and raise my family. And that, in a sense, has always been the American dream. And as long as that's in our hearts, we can possibly get back to it once people realize that
it's in your heart. I'm not sure
Yeah.
it's in everybody's heart.
it's not.
I'm sure
no.
that, we have a generation that would much rather go to the grocery store and buy a box of sugar-coated
Yeah.
ultra processed grains and pour some cow's milk on it and have that for breakfast than to have locally raised oatmeal.
Yeah. Lucky Charms. But the other thing is the packaging that, there was one I saw right before the show where they had demonstrated, they took these canned soups, and everybody had to eat soup once every day for like so many days. And after the test was over, the ones that had to have the soup every day had like 1,000% increase in their PCBs in their urine, meaning the little bitty bits of plastic that come from the packaging or the processing. This gets
God.
into our guts and
Yes.
goes through our systems, and
Yes.
and obviously sometimes it gets hung up somewhere and can cause real problems. And I remember when I was probably 13 or 14 years old, and I wanted to ask my dad. I said, I was thinking about plastic, and I was thinking, is plastic, is that really good for it to be everywhere? Is it going to degrade? Is it going to mess up our environment? I said, is it legal to do something unless there's a law against it? Or if you do something that's harmful, will the law step in and stop you?
Right.
I mean,
I mean, that's a very, very important
from
question,
a kid's point of view, it makes sense that the answer to that should be absolutely clear and well known to everyone.
which is what? What should the answer to that be?
The answer should be that there's regulation of things that are going to be brought into the environment. There has to be. We can't just let people poison the environment. Now,
So, in other words, if I invent a new kind of material for packaging,
yeah,
I can't just automatically use it.
I think, well, right now, if you use it and you get caught, then you're going to have some problems. You know, if it violates the Uniform Commercial Code's definition of a marketable product, if it's inherently dangerous.
But how do you know if it's inherently dangerous?
Well, you don't. So that's why you have scientists that try to predict that for you,
Right.
and then you buy a insurance policy from somebody that says even if you screw up, you're covered.
Well, it's like this thing that I just read recently about black plastic
Oh,
and how
yeah.
black plastic utensils, which are so popular in kitchens,
Yeah.
and how they are full of all kinds of toxic crap.
Because it's reused from melting
Right.
down old stuff, and
And-
that old stuff could have electronics in it. It could have all
Exactly.
kinds of
And
bad stuff.
we had black plastic utensils in our
Yeah.
kitchen. And I'm thinking to myself as I go gather them up and throw them in the trash can, how did this happen? How did it happen that this toxic product ended up being okay to sell to me to use in cooking our food?
Right? How
What
is
is
that
wrong
okay?
with our system?
Exactly?
Right.
And that is a microcosm of what is wrong with our system, is that happens all the time in so many different
Exactly.
ways.
Exactly.
Right, but they designed society to live in cities, to be 15-minute cities. Social engineering. It's social engineering is off the charts. They want us off the land, and that's, again, we were talking about the American dream and the frontier mentality, and I'm going to build my own self-sufficient farmstead, uh, ranch, whatever you want to call it, and you said, but a lot of people don't want that, and this is where science fiction in our lives, I think, has really done its job. And that is to give us the idea that the future is absolutely going to be not in the prairie, not in the forest, not finding, not in the waterfalls or the amazing nature of the world. The future is going to be in buildings, in steel built buildings, and we're all going to be jammed together and used as labor in these big steel buildings that Isaac Asimov told us about when he wrote Caves of Steel in like 1951. And with Asimov and Fahrenheit 451 guy, Heinlein, and
Ray Bradbury.
Heinlein, all Vonnegut I would include, but all of this is setting our brains to think the future is not going to be in nature. And so that is kind of a default feeling, I think, for a lot of people, that, well, yeah, it'd be interesting, but it'd be a lot of work, and you'd have to clean up the horse poop, and why would I want to work so hard as one of those frontier yeomen of the past? I'll just go live in my 15-minute city and do my
But some people
35
want
hours.
that. There's nothing wrong with that.
I don't know. I think it's destructive of human nature itself. I think humans have to be.
That's you. That's how you want to live. But
Yeah.
there are people who enjoy living in the middle of crowds. They are energized by being around a lot of people, by being around chaos. I mean, we're not all the same. And so if there are people who are who want to live in a city and have everything within 15 minutes, more power to them. It's when we're required to do that, then that becomes a problem.
Oh, just had to put somebody in a timeout. Well, time is almost up here. Well, what is it? 11:51.
Yeah, we got some
Let's
time.
see what else everybody has
Yeah.
on their minds. Dysregulation. Yeah, that's the scary thing. Elon Musk, cuts all the regulations, and then who knows what's going to be in the can of soup next week.
Well, there is that. That's a really important point that, when you deregulate, it then opens the doors for companies to do whatever they want. I mean, I saw that in the radio industry. In the 90s, we deregulated the radio industry, and it opened the door for Clear Channel and iHeartRadio to buy up all of the radio stations around the country. And now, radio is one big, massive corporate giant that has no local soul. And that was always radio's advantage. The radio stations felt local and they were tied to the community. And when I worked in radio, our connection to the community was just so special. And it was part of what made the job so gratifying, is that we were connected to the community. And now you have all of these heartless, soulless, cookie cutter radio stations all playing the same tired, 15 hits over and over again from music makers who are part of some big corporate cookie cutter. It's deregulation changed that industry. Yeah. So,
And there's another example of a whole worthwhile industry being closed down. I mean, the economic impact of that. What is the impact of that?
right.
Yeah. Well, I've seen that it's just another way of destroying local communities. Take away
Right.
your loyalty to your town, to your school, to your county, and make it all, everybody's loyal to channel whatever from Nashville.
Yeah, everything is homogenized. Look at shopping malls. You could drop a person in a shopping mall in any city in the country and they would have no clue where they are. Nothing in that shopping mall would tell them whether they were in Detroit or Dallas or Los Angeles or Atlanta.
Corky says cold fusion, completely natural. It's in tornadoes. He believes, and I think we've done a couple shows with Corky and
Mhm.
and the expert Bob, can't remember his last name, but very, very interesting stuff. And I think that's part of the secret technology that we're not allowed to play with. Like plasma we were talking about the other day, how this idea of there is this fourth state of matter. It's not all just gas, liquid, or solid. There's plasma, and I think that's when you see these kind of orb things that are sparkly and always almost effervescent, but also somewhat translucent in a way. You see, if people are seeing the videos of what they're seeing in the sky right now, I think we're seeing some very high tech stuff that's been done, by the Area 51 people, the Skunk Works, and I think it's a Space Force. I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe we'll find out, but that's what I think. Trump said, well, I think they should just tell us what it is, and maybe he's going to tell us what it is. Maybe he's going to tell us who killed JFK. That would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not holding out hope for that.
Yeah, I hope I know during my lifetime that the country is going to actually stand up and require disclosure of all of the events
I
that,
think that could be a turning point. I
yeah,
think that when that kind of a truth is revealed, then it's going to open a lot of eyes, and it's going to open a lot of eyes in a way that is going to make people more willing to accept the fact that things aren't what they thought they were.
and here's one of my favorite learning things that I've learned this year. The sun powers us. It's not cold. The sun powers us in ways that are direct and individual to each human being. And if you live in a cave of steel, you're not getting your sunlight. So that's another reason that I think it's essential that we retain our ability to walk in the forest, to enjoy a beautiful sunrise at the beach, and to retain what we can of nature. Because without nature, we're just not. I just don't think we can survive without nature. I just don't believe it. So, no, I don't want to live in a 15-minute city where I, have this little cubicle where I have to unfold my bed every night from the wall and, squeeze in. I'm taller than most people. I need room.
You need lots of space. You're a big guy. Yes.
Nike has a line of hi, Prester John. Nike has a line of shoes that they say are made from ocean trash, but there's still company still gets $150 for them. Okay.
All right, let's think that one through.
Yep, and all the media is just owned by 5 or 6 entities.
That's right.
Yeah, this is control of the media, control of our minds, and
yeah, I mean you've seen that cartoon that has the little fish being eaten by the bigger fish, being eaten by the bigger fish, being eaten by the bigger fish. That's the media right there.
the right needs to take ownership for the deregulation blitzkrieg. That is okay. I'm all for deregulation of unnecessary regulations, but I'm in favor of keeping the necessary ones.
Right, but who gets to decide what's necessary, what's not necessary?
That's why we have a Doge.
All right. The Doge will decide.
Now, here's a good point. Clarky, love radio, millions of channels now. The sun is cold. Don't tell me the sun is cold. It's hot, man. I couldn't get anywhere near the sun without burning up. But anyway, millions of channels just reminds me that there's internet service where you can go to this, and then you could pick a city in the world or a town, or a place in the world that shows you where all the broadcast centers are. And so I was going to the ones in Ireland and listened to the Irish.
Oh, how fun.
Broadcasts. That was a few months ago. I haven't done it in a while. But the idea that there's millions of channels all over the world, and you can, if you just go to the trouble, get on your internet and find some channels that, maybe you'd like to hear some, Brazilian music, and find a channel that does that. Or
yes.
Learn.
The internet gives us access to all kinds of wonderful things. Yes.
Yeah, improve. Listen to the news in French or something if you want to work on your French.
Yes.
That's the challenge of a lifetime. That language, man. When they made that language, they made a real.
I can see, a gajillion years ago when they made that language, a bunch of Frenchmen sitting around going, "Let's make our language so confusing nobody will want to speak it."
Oh, you sound like Inspector Clouseau. I would like a room.
A room.
A room.
Yes.
Sir? What, sir?
A room.
Okay. Yeah, sunburn is a real thing. That's true. I'm just just tossing out things off the top of my head, but there was an interesting study about melanoma, and the reverse seems to be true, that the more sun that you get, the less melanoma cases there are. And it has to do with your individual genetics and all of that. But um, the sun is our friend. You can't just be afraid of the sun and live in a cubicle all your life. You got to get out there.
Okay, enough with a cubicle. We get it.
You know what?
What?
It's almost lunchtime.
It is. I got to go make some pizzas.
Yeah, and you promised pizza for today.
Yes, I did. Vegan pizza. Don't worry.
Oh, I
It's
ain't
made.
worried.
No, I'm talking to the folks out there. I just want to make sure they understand we're doing vegan pizzas with vegan stuff.
All right. Well, I'm just scrolling through everything else that people have said. Thank you for all your comments. And, well, we'll see you next week, Friday.
Yes, it'll be the first show of 2025.
And hopefully I'll have put some of my resolutions into action by then.
Yeah, you'll have already had 3 days to work on it.
All right, Marcia Keith, thank you so much for being with me for another Friday live chat here at McDuff Lives. See you guys Monday morning with a brand new show. I'm not sure what it'll be, but I hope it'll be interesting to you. Bye now.